You can go ahead and call me the mayor of Crazy Town if you want to, but I firmly believe that whatever else happens in this recruiting class is just icing on the cake for what has now become the official Cowboy recruiting state.
You are Locked On Oklahoma State, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma State Cowboys, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, y'all, and hello, all. Welcome back to Locked On Oklahoma State, your top stop for all things Cowboy and Cowgirl related. My name is Cody Stovall. I want to thank you kindly for stopping by to make this your first listen. We're available on all of your podcasting platforms, visually as well on YouTube. Find me personally on X at Aldeo State. Today, we're brought to you by Game Time Tickets. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, for $20 off your first purchase. Go get squared away with the best in the ticketing industry, which is Game Time today. Meanwhile, we get to shift into the recruiting conversation that equals Oklahoma State owning the state of Oklahoma in recruiting. And you can replay that, you can rewind that, you can say it to all your friends, because this is a conversation that has never happened before. It's okay to be happy. It's okay to pretend to be quote-unquote little brother when quote-unquote little brother is steamrolling the state of Oklahoma when it comes to recruiting. And of course, the copium flowing right now in Norman, America is going to tell you that, oh, these guys weren't good enough, and the class of Oklahoma recruits this year is not SEC level, and this and that and the other. We're going to talk about being SEC level a little bit more in segment 2. But nonetheless, Landen Anderson has decided to commit to Oklahoma State. He recently decommitted from KU. He was a 4-star commit when he committed to KU after their junior day. He also took visits to Arizona State, Baylor. He had a lot of interest from places like Maryland and UNLV, amongst many others. He was a 4-star that was downgraded for whatever reason after decommitting from KU. Doesn't matter. He's a Cowboy. And this accentuates the ownership of this class. It's okay to gloat a little bit. It's okay to tell your Sooner friends that this is the Cowboy state now. That has never, ever happened before. Again, we've had moments where we've grabbed some of the top talent in the state, but not 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of them. Not 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of the top 15. Not the number 1 overall player in the state. Number 1 defensive lineman in the state. Number 1 defensive end in the state. Number 1 linebacker in the state. Number 1 running back in the state. Yeah, Colton Yarborough and Landen Anderson, you could debate on which one of them is the best defensive end in the state of Oklahoma. But Landen Anderson seems to foot this bill, coming in at 6'4", 280 pounds. And more importantly, this keeps the Edmond Santa Fe pipeline going. Calvin Bundage was one of the funnest players ever to watch at Oklahoma State. And before his catastrophic back injuries, he was definitely on his way to being a top 3-round pick in the NFL draft. And even with his back injury, he still made a couple practice squads in the NFL as well. Then you had Trace Ford, a couple big years at Oklahoma State, a couple injury-prone years. Then you enter Talon Shetron. Then you enter Tabor Shetron. Now we get Landen Anderson. And you know what? From a varsity perspective, you could almost consider Landen to be a late riser. This previous season was his first year, according to Max Preps, as a starter on varsity. And in his first year as a starter on varsity, he had 83 tackles, 11 quarterback hurries, 11 tackles for loss, and he was even able to jump in on the sacks category. Landen Anderson is such a disruptive force that he literally takes away a portion of the field, right? Corners can sometimes be out on an island if they can take away that section of the field. If you have a defensive end that can essentially do the same thing that does massive amounts for the guys on the back end. And we've seen previously, we've had some guys like Tyler Lacey be so good at eating up blocks or getting penetration that he caused enough chaos to create more opportunities for the other dudes. That's precisely what Landen Anderson could be in college. But he's already a disruptive force with that amount of tackles. That's absolutely crazy. When you're talking 80, 90 tackles, those are typically your linebackers and your safeties. Defensive linemen do not typically creep up into that category because their area of operation is a lot smaller. Their ability to get out on the edge is a lot more concentrated. So those numbers are astronomical from a defensive end. In his first year of playing varsity football. The athleticism is absolutely off the charts. The fact that we're able to continue this Edmond Santa Fe pipeline, OU for years, they had pipelines they could pick and choose from all over the country. Oklahoma State really, to my knowledge, started building this pipeline with Edmond Santa Fe way back with Calvin Bundage. Before Calvin Bundage, we weren't getting those guys. They were all going to OU. So the fact that we're not only having a conversation of Oklahoma State's going to be competitive with OU in-state recruiting, that's not the conversation. The conversation is utter, pure domination. It's not even close. And financially, OU has every bit as much, if not quite a bit more, NIL capabilities than Oklahoma State does. Yet Oklahoma State is able to merge the competent NIL factor, right? You have to be competitive. You have to make a competent argument as to what your NIL collective can do for the student athletes, but you also have to be able to build relationships. You also have to be able to explain to them how they're going to fit in the system. You also have to be able to schematically, from a film perspective, show them this is where you're going to fit in. This is what you look like. This is what we think you're going to morph into. So there's a lot that goes into the recruiting. NIL is a part of it. But in order to have the right culture, you have to have the right camaraderie. You have to have the right cohesiveness in the staff. And this staff is recruiting to unprecedented levels. I mean, Mike Gundy has mentioned it, which, you know what, we're about to get into here in segment 2. But it's very obvious. And we're even going to read a quote from Landen Anderson. So McLean put out a little article over the weekend leading up to a statement by Landen Anderson. McLean said the Cowboys made up a lot of ground recruiting Landen Anderson, who wasn't even on the radar with the last coaching staff. But without even coaching a single game at Oklahoma State, these new coaches are proving their worth. Then the Landen Anderson statement. Yeah, they weren't giving me a lot of attention, Landen said of the last staff. Like, they weren't great at recruiting. But this new coaching staff, I really like them a lot. They bring a lot of energy and they bring a lot of confidence. That's because they cut their teeth doing things the right way. Well, doing things the productive way. And, Mike Gundy's always kind of tiptoed in that territory when it comes to recruiting of things that he didn't want to do, or maybe he did want to do, or we're going to leave that to the SEC coaches. Now we have all SEC coaches on the defensive side of the ball. And the NFL stops to go alongside them are one of the reasons that we're able to capitalize. And, we would have had the opportunity to land both of the Edmond Santa Fe fellas. Obviously, Jalen Battle decided to commit to Baylor over the weekend. And if we would not have landed Taj Overton, number 1 defensive lineman in the state, if we would not have landed Danny Bill III, number 1 overall recruit in the state of Arkansas, then we probably would have had a much better position in landing Jalen Battle. But we did land our top guys, and so Jalen Battle takes his talents to Baylor, and we land Landen Anderson. Keep this pipeline going. Keep this Oklahoma connection flowing, because this should be the new model moving forward. This is proof that everything that was ever said previously, our entire lives, is that Oklahoma State will never catch Oklahoma when it comes to in-state recruiting. It just will never happen. Yet here we are. Not only have we caught them, but this is pure, utter domination. We have boxed them out of the paint from acquiring any rebounds or even having the opportunity to put their hand on the ball. That's how good this new staff is doing. And I got to give credit also to Mike Gundy in this. He was reluctant in doing certain things when it came to recruiting and NIL. The embracing of this is likely to show fruitful on the field, and we have to wait and see for that aspect of it. But this is no longer just a sales pitch. These recruits have physical, tangible reasons why Oklahoma State is doing things to an unprecedented level. We're putting ourselves in a position to land unprecedented talent. Instead of just getting a few here and there, we're setting ourselves up to now be the tradition-rich program that grabs all of this top in-state talent. If you want to have the best development, the best college experience, you come to Oklahoma State if you're from the state of Oklahoma. And while we're at it, do not miss out on your opportunity to get tickets to come see the Cowboys or the next fun event near you. Game Time is the bee's knees for all of your ticketing needs. We've all been there before. We've all, logged onto a website for tickets to get in the early waiting for a concert. And then when they go on sale, you find out you just lost your spot. So now you might not get to see the show you've been dying to see. Live music should not just be about getting there. It should be about all the memories that come with it. And part of those memories are not dealing with all of the stress that comes with ticket buying. This is where Game Time has your back. Game Time makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually are going to drop as the show gets closer to showtime. And then you can save up to 60% off with the killer last-minute deals. If you're tired of endless scrolling trying to find the best deal, Game Time Zone Deals pick the best seats for you in the section. If you've ever wondered what your view would look like before you bought, well, Game Time's panoramic seat view takes care of that for you. If you've ever been worried about if your plans had to change or not, well, the Game Time guarantee has your back with a cancellation protection that comes with the best in the industry. So take the guesswork out of you buying tickets for concerts. You can go to sports. You can go to local comedy shows. It doesn't matter. Game Time has you covered. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. But again, create that account and redeem that code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, for $20 off. LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. Get that $20 off. Download the Game Time app today for last-minute tickets. Lowest prices guaranteed. Mike Gundy, of course, had to stir the pot a little bit, and we are thankful for that. There was some teams that brought like 5 guys. We only brought 3. So I was curious as to whether there was going to be some clippable moments, but there definitely was. And ironically enough, the most clippable moment, or one of the most clippable moments thus far of Mike Gundy's discussion with people over Big 12 Media Days, was this new coaching staff. And in his words, this new coaching staff is much more aggressive. And then he kind of went on to about how, this staff is doing things the SEC way. This is the way things get done. He's allowed them to be more, quote unquote, aggressive. I mean, whatever that means. But he pointed at the fact that these guys are doing things that they've done previously. So when Todd Grantham and Cap Dede and Jules Montanar and Ryan McNamara, whenever they've had their stops at Mississippi State and Florida and Louisville and Charlotte and the NFL, Baltimore Ravens, New Orleans Saints, amongst all of these stops, they have learned this is how you do it. This is how you recruit. This is how you recruit at Florida. This is how you recruit at Mississippi State. This is how you recruit everywhere in the country that cares deeply about football. For a long time, it was the backdoor bagman kind of conversations, which they're never going to go away, right? NIL makes it, quote unquote, bunny ears legal to facilitate these kind of brokerage deals for players. But the backdoor nature of it's never necessarily going to change. And the SEC has always been a backdoor league. CFB Reddit or somebody put out a tweet basically mocking the coverage of Mike Gundy's statement, right? Because if the SEC does it, they're like, oh, yeah, no, of course you can do that. That makes sense. That's smart. It's a smart way for you to recruit and work the system. But when Mike Gundy says it, everybody's like, oh, my gosh, you need to watch out, Mike. You need to watch Oklahoma State. You need to watch Mike Gundy, because he simply stated the obvious, the blatantly obvious, and that is, I've allowed my new staff to recruit more aggressively like they have done in the SEC. So whatever the secret sauce is in SEC country, that's what our coaching staff is doing, because that's where our coaching staff came from. So if anybody has an irritation or a problem with Mike Gundy's statement, then you need to go investigate where this started from, which is where these coaches were taught to do all this, the SEC. And again, I don't know what all of this may entail. I mean, yeah, I do the recruiting thing from time to time, but there's there's always going to be different channels for players to have conversations, just like this previous season. There was always going to be channels during the season for guys like Nick Martin and Kendall Daniels and Colin Oliver and Ollie Gordon and DeJon Stribling to get these offers. And it's never going to change. And the beauty of all of this is the coaching staff that we have now, we knew they weren't tampering with other places because they're all new to Oklahoma State. As in, they weren't preparing their rosters for a move like Lincoln Riley did. Hey, guys, I'm about to leave OU and go to USC. You all should come with me. That type of conversation never really happened because Todd Grantham came from the NFL. Ryan McNamara's recently working with the NFL. Cap Dede, Jules Montanar. These guys have been a crew that have been recruiting in the SEC together since like 2015. So all they have done is take the SEC model, right, from Mississippi State and Florida and beyond, and Alabama, right? Todd Grantham was defensive coordinator for Nick Saban. So everything that they've learned in the SEC is what they're doing right now in Stillwater, Oklahoma. And that is precisely why you're seeing this recruiting staff take shape. Is there anything nefarious happening? No, because there doesn't need to be. Oklahoma State has a culture. Oklahoma State has a winning system. Oklahoma State has proven methodology to get people to the next level. Oklahoma State has a proven track record of giving opportunities to compete at the highest level. And the highest level is for conference titles. There's going to be a capitalization moment somewhere along the next couple of years where winning Big 12 titles starts to become what is the accepted piece. The irony, though, is people coming after Mike Gundy because he said, I'm allowing my coaches to be aggressive and to recruit the way that they know how and to recruit the way that they know works and to hit the transfer portal and bring guys in with methodology they know is successful. I mean, you're going to have some of your outliers like Mordecai McDaniel, who's obviously recruited by Todd Grantham originally at Florida. So that's going to go a long ways. I mean, that's pretty reminiscent of when Tanner McAllister went to Ohio State with Jim Knowles. It wasn't even necessarily that he was going to be a surefire starter at Ohio State. It was, I need a couple players to come with me to help implement my system, to help explain to the guys, I know what this coach is looking for. This is what he wants. This is what he doesn't want. This is what you should be doing. This is what you got to have a couple of those individuals. But Oklahoma State has a plethora of those. And now we have a plethora of guys on the staff that know how to recruit. And then you have Doug Meacham on the other side of the ball. I mean, Doug Meacham has never had an inability to recruit. We've talked about some of the best players in Oklahoma State history, dating all the way back to Des Bryant, were partially recruited by Doug Meacham. So the Blake Jarwin conversations go back to Doug Meacham, Joe Randall, Brandon Whedon, Justin Blackman. All of those guys kind of were coming up during that Doug Meacham era while at Oklahoma State. And then obviously, he took his talents to Baylor, TCU, a couple different instances. But even Doug Meacham has learned how to recruit at the highest levels. Recruiting offensively at Oklahoma State has never been much of a difficulty. The difficulty was always recruiting the defensive side of the ball, right? Getting the Taj Overtons, the Danny Bills, the Landon Andersons, the Trey McLaughlins. That's always been pretty difficult. Landing the Talon Shetrans and the Katie Batman Jones is a little bit more in line with what has historically been what happens at Oklahoma State. Offensively, especially running backs, wide receivers, we can recruit anybody in the country. But it's been recently, thanks to Jim Knowles in 2021, that the Oklahoma State defense is starting to get more respect. And now we have a coaching staff that is not only aggressive, but they know what avenues to go. They know what high school coaches to contact, what high school coaches to avoid. They know what 7-on-7 circuits produce the best talent and the ones that are kind of a waste of time. They've been doing this for years in the SEC. And obviously in the NFL, you're coaching players from all over. But even in that, you're conversationally bringing up, what led to your success in the SEC, what led to your recruitment in the SEC, what led to you choosing Alabama over Georgia in the SEC. So these conversations have been happening for years, and it's just moments where these coaches can learn a little bit more and make it applicable the next time they get the opportunity. And that's all that's happening. Is Todd Grantham hired his staff that he's had together since their Mississippi State days, starting back in 2015. He put that staff here in Stillwater because they had a system that worked. It worked at Mississippi State. It worked at Alabama. It worked at Florida. So why wouldn't it work at Oklahoma State? And we've never had that thought process before, right? Mike Gundy's been very, very selective in the recruiting over the years. And essentially, he didn't go after people he assumed weren't going to pick Oklahoma State. This staff, they're not doing that. They don't give 13 craps. If you fit a certain mold that they're looking for, and you can be a key contributor within 2 years in Stillwater, they don't care who you are, what star you are, where you came from, what place you played at. And that's, to me, one of the biggest breaths of fresh air about this new staff, which is that's a segue. It's a segue into segment 3, speaking of that correlation with the staff. Another popular topic has been the defensive line, offensive line in the SEC. And our JD Piquel was talking about it. Some of the 365 guys were talking about it as well. The biggest difference between the SEC and everybody else is the O-line and D-line. And we've gone over all of the 300-pounders at Oklahoma State now and how 10 years ago we weren't able to get those dudes. Now we have those dudes on the offensive side of the ball. We have multiple coaches on the offensive side of the ball that should be able to see improvements. We're going back to an old school zone blocking scheme, I believe. So the defensive side of the ball, if the SEC lives and breathes off of, the big fellas down low on the defensive side, Oklahoma State has to improve. And that's already happened. That's just from a technical training aspect, this staff operates light years different. Now, that also means there's a lot more information to absorb. And, the more you're thinking, the less you're flying around on the field. That age-old adage is very true. So it's more complex. So it's going to take more time. But the technical aspects have already increased dramatically. Secondarily, this staff isn't playing favorites. They don't care where you came from. They don't care how long you've been here. They don't care if you were a starter last year or not. They really don't. They only care about production. So the best players are going to play, which did not happen last year. Another big indication for me is the fact that we were able to be somewhat aggressive in the transfer portal, but we really basically made a distinction between the linebackers and the defensive tackles. Okay, so let's break this thing down here. You have to have the big dudes up front to make it work, or it's never going to work. Starting off, we brought in Michael Deotta, the 6'5", 297-pound defensive tackle transfer from Virginia. Then you have UCLA transfer, 6'2", 307 pounds, Sidvini Havili Kafusi. Then you have Aiden Kelly, former 4-star recruit out of the state of Oklahoma. He's multiple years in the system now. This is his time to shine. He's up to 6'3", 315. And I've heard that his hand fighting and stuff has gotten a lot better this offseason. And that was part of his difficulty the last couple of years. Physically was never a question. He could physically play at this Power 4 level. It was just a matter of the technical side. This is where we should see the improvement with this staff out of guys like Aiden Kelly. Then you have Amon Oates, 6'3", 315 pounds. I think this dude could be a potential big-time NFL level guy. Another one of those, didn't start playing football till high school, didn't really start learning his spot on the defensive line until NEO, and now he's kind of figuring it all out. Then you have Demarion Thomas, the 6'2", 340-pound junior defensive tackle transfer from Vanderbilt. Then you have Luke Webb, 6'2", 295. He'll be a redshirt freshman this year. Austin Young, another young cat, redshirt freshman, 6'4", 260. You have Rashad Bradley, brought over from East Mississippi Community College, 6'3", 270. Deshaun Brown, 6'3", 280 from right down the road in Choctaw, Oklahoma. Landen Dean, when healthy, he's been talked about quite a bit the last couple of off seasons. 6'5", 280 pounds from Frontenac, Kansas. Then you have Kyron Duhon, the massive acquisition out of UTEP. He was a freshman All-American that was sought after by several Big Ten and SEC schools, coming in at 6'1", 270 pounds, which is precisely why he ended up at UTEP, because people said he was too undersized. Then you have Jaleel Johnson. Common consensus is his game has increased significantly, especially recently. He's going to be an absolute mismatch nightmare for any team in the country. Then you have Armstrong Nodum, the only dude on the roster that could lift with Justin Kirkland was Armstrong Nodum, 6'2", 290 pounds. Then you have Michael Riles coming in, the 4-star from Port Arthur, Texas, 6'4", 250 pounds, rocking into Oklahoma State. Whenever you combine this group of dudes with the fact that Shadavian Bradley is going to be out there, Malik Charles is going to be out there, that's 6'4", 240 and 6'3", 280. And then people tend to forget about Wendell Gregory. Wendell Gregory was a huge addition that kind of got swept under the radar just because of the timing. But he was a big deal coming out of South Carolina, 6'3", 260 pounds. Then you have Tamarick Johnson, redshirt freshman, another year in the system, 6'2", 230. And then you have Taj McCoy coming over from Colorado, 6'3", 250. Does that Colorado program produce like Rob Glass? We're about to find out. You also have Puaso Utu, 6 foot, 235 pounds out of Arlington, Texas. We have the size, we have the skill, we have the speed, and now we have the coaching staff to get the most out of this group. Last year's defensive line did not do a lot. The year prior, they weren't supposed to necessarily do much except for to eat up areas of operation. Last year was a little bit different, and Brian Nardo had some things shake down, and he had some changes, and the personnel kind of got wonky. Last year, I think, is not a good representation of what is traditional. What is traditional is Oklahoma State is to have these 8, 9, 10 win seasons. What is not traditional is to do it behind the defense, as we did in 2021. But outside of 1984 and 2021, the offense has been the catalyst for Oklahoma State football. Even when we had our quote-unquote down years, getting top running backs, wide receivers was never an issue. It was never an obstacle. Now we're getting those level guys on the defensive side of the ball. That has to have a lot of us excited, right? In a season where everyone's doubting Oklahoma State and everyone's doubting Mike Gundy, this is kind of the season where I feel like it's time to put all of the chips in the middle of the table. And hopefully we're all talking about a fun little cash out at the end of the year. Speaking of at the end, this is going to be the end of this one right here. As always, you know I love you. God bless. Go Pokes. Thank you for tuning in to make this your first listen here in Locked On Oklahoma State, because you could be anywhere. So happy you choose to be here. Do me a favor. Hit the like button if you liked it. Dislike if you didn't. That's okay too. More importantly, share, comment, and subscribe my podcast with people out there. You're everything that makes this work. I appreciate everything that you do. So go do what you do. Hit the stars. Leave some reviews. Alrighty, y'all. Later, taters.